Hey, everybody, and welcome to Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football live video show. As always, it's Carter, Ben, and Mitch here to talk in-depth Alabama football with you. Of course, after this video is done, it will be hosted on houndstoothheroes.com. You can find them on Twitter at HToothHeroes and on Facebook as well. Also, if you're looking to follow us on Twitter, the show account is at PCWR_show. I am at RTRFND. Ben is at Ben_Litvin, and Mitch is at M_Whatson. So this week we'll be reviewing a little bit of the Kentucky game for talking a little bit about Arkansas. I've seen a lot of people complaining about Saturday, but frankly, we were just talking a little bit before the show. The offensive execution was real sloppy at times in the first half. Other than that, that's really all you can complain about. I mean, the defense gave up 160 total yards. They forced turnovers. They scored on defense again. Josh Jacobs looked amazing. The offensive line was good outside of the first drive or two, maybe. Jalen's threw the ball really well in the second half. There were lots of things to be. Tim Williams is a literal demon.
Tim Williams is a good player. He's a good player.
It was a good performance on the whole. I think. I think people get bogged down a little. I think Ben was saying before the show. There are some people who every time Alabama plays somebody who's not a top 5 team, there are people who expect a touchdown drive every offensive possession and a 3-and-out every defensive possession, and that's a little unrealistic.
I just think that people would do well to understand that even Alabama is not going to play a perfect game every single time out, and just because the score isn't 21-0 10 minutes into the game doesn't mean that. The sky is falling apart, or
right.
It's just Kentucky was out there too. They showed up, they got off the bus, they walked into the stadium, they put on uniforms, pads. They played too. Alabama wasn't out there playing against air, and Kentucky has some players. You know what I mean? And they have an offensive scheme that can be sort of somewhat challenging. So. I think Carter did a good job covering the basics of the game. I guess we'll just get defense out of the way really quick. The defense played great. The defense always plays great. Tim Williams, in particular, he was kind of amazing.
I want to say, I thought I saw that it was either PFF College or CFB Film Room tweeted that he played 11 snaps.
Yeah.
11 snaps, and he got a sack, 2 hurries, a forced fumble, 3 TFLs. I mean, it was just an absolutely absurd productivity. And I was trying to get in a little bit more of a rewatch of the game before we were starting, and his first play in when he didn't get a sack, but he had a hurry that forced a throw way out of bounds. I didn't even realize Kentucky's left tackle was a true freshman. I mean, that poor kid. True freshman going out there having a lineup against Tim Williams.
That was as into it and emotional as I've ever seen Tim. He was yelling and screaming after every play, and he was playing the run well too. I mean, he's always going to rush the passer well, but he was playing the run well. He was just you can just think about him watching that first half from the sidelines, knowing he can't play, but just ready to go, and then finally being unleashed on them in the second half, and he was just a terror. He's a good player, and we maybe underrate him sometimes on this show a little bit. The 3 of us.
I think especially because we're so big on the Ryan Anderson train and how generally underrated he's been, and so we kind of try to pump Ryan up, and Ryan deserves every bit of that. He's a phenomenal player. But by the way, those of you who haven't seen it out there, you like my elephant low ball glass.
That's pretty sweet.
These were a wedding gift that my parents got, and then they never used them, and they were like, "You want these?" And I was like,
Hell yeah, I want them.
Ryan deserves every bit of that praise, but does not knock down Tim in any way. I mean, the kind of explosiveness that he has,
Yeah.
and the way he can turn that into strength as well is unreal at times.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. And he's looking more comfortable against the run. Now, it's one thing for him, and we'll get into Arkansas later. It's one thing for him to be able to. He seems now pretty comfortable playing on standard downs against these spread teams. He seemed pretty comfortable playing on standard downs against Ole Miss. He certainly seemed comfortable on Saturday playing on standard downs against Kentucky. It's a whole nother story whether he's going to be able to play on standard downs against Arkansas.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll table that discussion for later in the show. But overall, though, extremely pleased. Mitch, who were you particularly pleased with on the defense besides Tim? Did anybody else stand out to you?
I thought Dalvin had a pretty good game. Yeah,
just the whole defense.
yeah.
Deshaun Hand had a great game.
Deshaun Hand had a very good game.
It was the first time he was really kind of popping out at you this season, I think. He had a couple really nice plays. One where he chased down a back from behind on a screen pass that was pretty impressive. But I think he got more snaps on Saturday than he has tended to this year, and he looked really good out there doing it. Rashaan Evans also, for the first time all year, and of course he's
healthy.
hurt.
Yeah.
Seemed like he was played basically the entire second half as I guess he plays Will when he's an inside linebacker. Looked pretty good, I thought. Made a couple plays. I think you can kind of tell that he's still a little uncomfortable in sort of a traditional inside linebacker role. I thought there were a couple of times when his gap discipline was not the best, and a couple of times when you can tell he's not as comfortable taking on and shedding blocks the way a traditional inside linebacker is. But on the whole, I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, he's not. I agree. He's not going to see any time there this week, I don't think.
Yeah.
But when the schedule moves further down the line, yeah, I mean it's just another guy that can play inside, and obviously his athleticism is pretty special. But I think though that he's still best as a pass rusher, as an edge rusher.
Right.
Christian Miller, I thought, had a nice game too. Made some impact filling in for Tim there.
It was him and Ryan that made the hit on the first fumble, I think.
Yeah, that was on the first fumble, and then it was on Ronnie's touchdown. It was Rashaan that chased the ball carrier down from behind, right, and ripped the ball out of his hands, which was a really nice play.
I think so. Yeah.
So, I guess Ronnie still allowed a couple completions.
Yeah, I think, we've harped on it before, but if there is another guy, and at this point, it may be just sort of a fool's hope to expect that they're going to try to replace him at that spot, but he's a liability in one-on-one coverage. He just is. And if the staff doesn't have another guy that they feel comfortable substituting for him, then, that's that. But that's going to be a weakness they have in the future, particularly when, they're facing teams with better receivers that they can get isolated with deeper receiving courts that they can get isolated on him. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen the staff be flexible as far as, changing things up with the secondary as the year goes on. I mean, I remember 2012. You started the season with Vinny at safety, and then Vinny gets moved to star, and then Vinny gets kicked off star, and then Geno Smith comes in, and Vinny gets moved to dime, or to money in dime. So they've shown some willingness to flip guys around as the season goes on. Certainly, the fact that Ronnie played money all of last year makes you think that they are kind of comfortable with him there.
Yeah.
But with Tony back, it's just like, if you're going to get him in the lineup somewhere, the obvious guy to kick out of the lineup seems to be Hootie. And if you kick Hootie out of the lineup, then you can keep Ronnie at safety. But
yeah. And it's not even really, I guess, something to look for this week. I was about to ask if we had seen Tony at safety at all this week in the practice reports, but I wouldn't even. I mean, it wouldn't even be something we would use much against Arkansas anyway. So
Yeah, because I don't think
Yeah.
you really don't need more than 5 defensive backs against Arkansas.
yeah,
And it's not like Tony's going to replace Averett at this point. So
Yep.
one way or the other, that's going to have to wait for a later week. I guess we should talk about the offense now.
Yeah. Josh Jacobs continues to look very, very impressive. He's got some really impressive moves as far as his. I mean, he can just kind of shake and bake out there. You know, he has a really good kind of wiggle in his run that he can get around guys, and he's very adept at finding a very good like zone runner.
Yeah,
I've been very impressed with him.
so excited for him. I mean, it's possible that like as the season goes on, it's not just like his role is not just going to be back up to Damian, but more of like a two-headed monster situation with Damian.
Right.
You know?
Mhm.
And that's what Alabama last year was different with Derek, but before that it was always two guys.
Oh yeah, they love to have two guys.
They love to have two guys. They had basically two guys every single year besides last year. So, and I don't see why they can't get back to that this year. Jacob seems ready for that role, at least to my eye.
Yep.
So that's something to definitely be excited about. I want to say something about the offensive struggles against Kentucky, or at least the perceived offensive struggles against Kentucky. I think that what the Ole Miss game taught us was that this offense is built around, if it's built around one thing, it's built around Jalen as a runner. At least when the offense is at its best, it's built around Jalen as a runner. Either Jalen actually running the ball, or the threat of Jalen running the ball, creating running opportunities for other guys, or the threat of Jalen and the running back running the ball, creating opportunities in the passing game. Now, they ran Jalen some, and they did some zone read against Kentucky. But if you contrast that with what you saw against Ole Miss, especially in the second half against Ole Miss, which is when I think you really saw the Alabama offense in its truest form, it was nothing like that.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, because in this game against Kentucky, which is over before it starts, the last thing you want to do is get your quarterback hurt.
Mhm.
That was true a week ago. That's even more true now.
Yeah.
So, you know, the last thing that this team can afford is an injury to Jalen. He is, at this point, the most indispensable player on the team.
Yeah, especially with Barnett gone.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Mhm.
So, and the offensive game plan against teams like Kentucky should reflect that. It should, A, reflect an ability or a need to keep Jalen healthy, and it should, B, reflect a need and a want to let Jalen work on his weaknesses, which is throwing the football,
Yeah.
getting the ball out on time and throwing the football. The offense against Kentucky, in a lot of ways, is not Alabama's offense. It's like a very watered down and stripped down version of Alabama's offense. So it makes sense that at times there's going to be some struggles.
Yeah.
And I just think that people have to understand, and I said this before the show, that Alabama's performance in these games against teams that they know they're going to beat is not instructive of future performance. We've seen performances much worse than this in other years that they went on to have great seasons. You can't glean anything about this team, especially the offense, from these games. And anybody who's trying to do that is really making a mistake, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you could just tell, like, from the very beginning and even after, like, just the whole time they were – I mean, Jalen had 20 passes in the first half.
Right.
How
Right.
often-
That's literally all you need to say.
Yeah. Like, how often do you think he's going to do that against teams that they feel they really need to be at their best to beat? Never. Never. They're never going to do that. Like, you've seen, like, already this year that they've started to come to that they understand where this team is really at its best offensively. And the things that they were doing on Saturday was not that. And you could tell that they wanted to work on it. And hopefully, you know, you saw sort of, you know, I don't know if you can expect this to carry forward necessarily, but it seemed sort of like in the passing game in the second half, like the light kind of came on for Jalen. I mean, he was like 10 of 12, and he had some pretty nice throws. I would say the second half of that game was really one of probably his best passing performance this season.
Absolutely.
And so if that can carry forward, we had been saying before that like these past 2 weeks against I already forgot who it was last week, Kent State and Kentucky were going to be it's basically going to be like practice, like preseason games.
Right.
Like ways for them. They had to survive against Ole Miss, and they needed to improve over these 2 weeks. Well, hopefully they did that.
Mitch, what'd you think about Jalen's performance and sort of the progression of his game in terms of, especially from a passing standpoint?
Yeah, I think we hit on one thing that I think helped him in the second half, and that was him throwing the ball 20 times in the first half. I think just getting comfortable dropping back and throwing the ball a bunch. It looked like he was getting in a rhythm. I would say you might have a better idea of that than I do, but
no, absolutely.
It all started to me, and this is this is a very like Gary Danielson type thing to say, but to me.
Hey, we like Gary.
I like it. Gary has good insight.
Gary gets a bad rap from people.
Well, okay, so there was a play in particular where Jalen, I think he checked down too quickly, and he had OJ on the sideline open.
Oh yeah, I just watched that play. It was a fake screen.
Yeah, it was a fake screen. Yeah,
and he ended up actually throwing the screen, and it was a disaster. But
right, and Saban. I mean, and then they showed Saban on the sideline, just kind of pointing at OJ and getting upset about him. And I think it was from that point on that he started to get into a rhythm. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but
because I think the play after that, he rolled out and hit Calvin deep for a first down. He threw his touchdown to Calvin on that on later on in that drive.
And Blackledge on the call made a point about this is the type of guy that can shake something off, like missing OJ down the field and come back and hit a play. And
you said Blackledge. You know who it was, though, right?
Was it?
You know who was called? It was Greg.
It was Greg.
It was Greg. Yeah, sorry.
Greg.
Yeah, I'm used to Blackledge doing the Saturday night games. It was Greg.
It was Greg. It's probably going to be Blackledge this week, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like this is like one of ESPN's. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, no, absolutely. The throw I thought was a really nice throw was the one on the goal line that Calvin dropped, that little slot fade.
Yeah.
When he put that right in the pocket for So
it was a little flat. I mean, to me, it may have been hard for Calvin to see it.
Yes,
it's kind of a flat throw,
he could have dropped that one in better.
Yeah.
But he got it there though.
Yeah.
It was a good throw, and I could see from the stands. I don't know if they showed this on the broadcast afterwards, but Calvin was mad at himself that he didn't catch that one.
Yeah,
that would have been number 3 for him, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, Calvin wanted that. It's nice to see. I think it's also particularly good for Calvin from a mental standpoint, to have a game like that and to have a half like that, because you don't want – this is your star. And I've always believed as a team, no matter what sport you're in, that it's important to get your stars going as early in the season as possible, because the last thing you want to establish them as focal points of your team, because you want them feeling good about themselves and feeling good about their ability to contribute, especially in a sport like college football where it might be a new quarterback, new offensive system. I think it's very good for Calvin mentally to see himself making big plays and to get going in an early game in the season after, at times, especially against USC, he seemed like he was just not even part of the offense really.
Right.
And he had some moments against Ole Miss, but it wasn't the same as last year. So I think it was very nice for him to have a huge half.
Yeah. It was the first time for me where it felt like where Calvin had become Jalen's go-to guy.
Right.
And I think when you have a guy like Calvin that you want him to be that guy, and it hadn't really gotten there earlier in the season. It was really good to see them developing that connection.
Yeah.
And part of that may have been a product of not having our Darius this week too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would think that you would agree, though, right, that even with our Darius back, Calvin should be the featured guy here.
Right.
And if a second guy is going to be featured, it probably should be OJ. You look at an offense like this, I guess this is maybe a good time to transition. I was thinking about this today. in my opinion, given the players on this offense, their ceiling, or at least what you'd envision their offense to be like schematically, is sort of like Clemson in a sense. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know if I expect at any point this season for Jalen to become the kind of.
No. Right. Sorry. I don't mean that Jalen. That's the one thing they're missing, right? That Clemson has Deshaun Watson and Alabama does not have that player at quarterback. But I just mean schematically in terms of the way they use their players and in terms of the way they set things up for their players. I feel like Alabama has very similar personnel to them.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, that's true. I would say that I think Alabama's run game is a little bit more diverse than Clemson's is.
Absolutely.
Like, people have made a really big deal this year about like, Alabama, they're going with a mobile quarterback. They're going full spread. Actually, Jalen lines up under center a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
So they really are like what you would call a multiple offense where they're in different sets. But no, I think you have a very good point that their personnel is very similar to Clemson's.
And I think that I think that OJ would sort of thrive in a Jordan Leggett type role.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities this year with the diversity of the Alabama run game and with especially introducing Jalen as a runner, forcing the defense to bring so many guys into the box and to react so quickly to the run, that there should be so many opportunities, more so this year than any other year, to get OJ working in behind the linebackers. I
was thinking about this like a couple weeks ago. A play I would love to see them run is to go 4 wide with OJ at like inline tight end, so an empty backfield, and then snap the ball to Jalen in the shotgun and have him fake a quarterback draw and then pop back up and toss it to OJ. Sort of like the RPO they did against Wisconsin last year, where it was a run package with that little toss to OJ, but modify that so that you can depopulate spread them out even more.
I think that's a really good point. And I think that one of the next steps for this offense in terms of being able to sort of fully take advantage of the threat that the running game gives you is to really start to work the middle of the field behind the linebackers. Now, that's what teams like, and if you look at teams like Ole Miss with Evan Ingram or Clemson with Jordan Leggett, and that's what these teams do so well. Less so Ole Miss probably because they don't have the same threat in the running game as Clemson does.
Yeah.
But especially Clemson with Watson and Gallman, with the way that they can just draw the linebackers up. And there's no defense for those sorts of plays.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's sort of it's one of the sort of purest, most dangerous forms of RPO-based spread attacks. Is like the most dangerous plays they have is when they are constantly putting the linebackers in run-pass conflicts.
Exactly.
And you can just punish those linebackers over and over and over again when you can run those plays well.
And
That's
if you look
exactly it.
if you look at
Sorry,
the defenses that we play, I think about like Tennessee and A&M. I don't know too much about LSU, but their linebackers are one of the weaker points of those defenses.
They all Beckwith is good for LSU. Jalen Reeves-Maben is good for Tennessee. I don't think I haven't scouted A&M's. Well, I've scouted some of their defense actually, but I don't really know anything a lot about the linebackers. My understanding is that it's not really a strength for them.
Yeah, I was thinking more like A&M, Tennessee, Auburn later in the season.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that'll be not only a good area to attack just because it stresses the linebacker, but just the personnel that Alabama will likely be going against.
And it produces quick throws. It produces quick throws too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you go against a team like A&M and you're worried about those pass rushers, or you go against Tennessee and you're worried about Barnett. Those are always quick throws. Those are very quick developing plays where it's just 3 steps, bam, hit the guy. So I really think that that's something that Alabama could be very successful with. And I think Carter said it best. When you have an offense like this, your focus is on the linebackers and your focus is on putting them in these run-pass conflicts. And it's really impossible to defend that. You know what I mean? And when you have Jimbo Fisher going up yesterday and ranting about how the offense is, there's just too much latitude in terms of what they can do. Well, this is sort of what he means, because he's maybe talking very specifically about the RPOs and about linemen going downfield, which is a point that Alabama fans know all too well. But even going beyond that, just the whole general schematic of this spread offense that you have here with your RPOs and your running quarterbacks and all that stuff, it just creates a situation for the defense where you just can't defend it almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, it's a very uneven playing field. And for the first time, Alabama really has the personnel to take advantage of how uneven the playing field can be.
Yeah.
So that was sort of I just had that thought, about sort of Clemson and about the sort of the things that they can do with the threat of their running game, and then how that complements the passing game. I think that's sort of what Alabama should strive to be.
Yeah. And that's where, OJ could be such an incredibly dangerous weapon there.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk a little bit more about Arkansas, I guess? I know I'm not sure any of us have done a whole lot of specific scouting about them. Ben and I were saying before the show that they almost seem like kind of the same team as last year in some ways. Austin Allen seems to be a clone of his brother. They've replaced one good tight end with another in exchanging Henry for Sprinkle. Drew Morgan is probably still their best outside receiver, although Hatcher, I think, is the other guy's name.
He's a good player. He's a good player, Keon Hatcher. He's maybe the most dangerous. Morgan might be the most reliable, I guess, but I think Hatcher in some ways is the most dangerous.
Statistically, their defense is not impressive. I haven't watched too much of film, but
and I think statistically their defense isn't too impressive, and I think that a lot of things they had trouble with against A&M, which is defending the run game and defending a diverse run game with the quarterback and the running back. Those are things that Alabama really should be able to take advantage of in this game, I would think.
Because Trevor Knight had, 2-3 touchdowns?
Yeah.
Two long ones.
Yeah. There was just huge holes to run through for the A&M ball carriers. So I really feel like Alabama is going to be successful in that regard on Saturday. I think you're going to go back to what we saw against Ole Miss, and you're just going to see the full complement of run plays. I think they're really going to work Jalen hard this game, because at this point it's just now it's real. Now there's no saving him, and I just think you're going to see the full menu of plays, the full menu of running plays at the very least.
Yeah. And a already diverse running attack that's starting to diversify even more. I know, Ben, you did a little bit of film review on Twitter, and they'd put a little inverted veer in there. And it wouldn't surprise me if they could just continue to add more and more as Jalen becomes more comfortable with it.
I mean, why not, right?
Yeah. I did want to so on that play, I noticed that inverted veer, the way Kentucky defended that was that they had, instead of committing one way or the other, they had the defensive end attack the mesh point.
Okay.
Which I know is one way that defenses like to try and defend those plays, especially when you've got, like with A&M, for instance, when you've got like really athletic defensive ends like Garrett. Do you know what the quarterback's what's his best decision there when they attack the mesh point?
That's interesting. I mean, that's attacking the mesh point really should not be.
Well, it's a gamble, right?
It's a huge gamble, and it shouldn't be a successful strategy. You're kind of hoping that the quarterback panics and makes the wrong decision, or is slow making the decision or something. You know what I mean? Sees the guy coming, but I think you attack the mesh point. I don't know. Honestly, to me, it really depends. When you attack the mesh point, where are the other defenders? Are you sort of scraping a defender, into the ends position or something to play the running back or to play the quarterback or something? I don't know. if he attacks the mesh point, I think that Jalen should just pull the ball and go.
Yeah.
Pull the ball and move to the vacated area, because I think you want to cut down on Jalen thinking. Just have him play as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And if the guy attacks you like that, just pull it and go, because Jalen's just so dangerous with the ball in his hands, and they're just
when it's on that play, I think he ended up handing off.
Yeah, I think he did too.
I guess it seems to me like as long as the quarterback is decisive,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
and both the quarterback and the running back are sufficiently fast, like you should be able, like if he's going to do that, you should be able to draw him in close enough that you can just, no matter who keeps the ball, that you should just be able to run around him and get into the space that he's left vacant.
Right. I'm less worried about guys attacking the mesh point, and more worried about, and Kentucky did this once later in the game successfully, is slow playing the option. If you have very athletic defensive ends that you're optioning and they slow play it well, there's an opportunity where, especially if you force the play wide, if you slow play it and you force the play wide, and then you can cut the guy's angle off, and that's a great opportunity. So that's the thing, right? If let's say you option like a Myles Garrett or something, and he slow plays it, and then he forces the wide run with the back, if it's an inverted veer, well, he's going to be able to string that out to the sideline, and his teammates are going to come down on you, and you're not really going to be able to get anything, I don't think. So that's more my concern. But if Alabama does inverted veer or something and the other team slow plays it, then again, Jalen should just pull it and take the 5 yards up the middle.
Right.
Stay. If they're going to try to be so patient against your option game, then choose the north-south run, the run that's going to be decisive, and it's going to be quicker to develop rather than the wide run. So if it's veer, just give. If it's inverted veer, just pull and take it up the middle. I think. Sorry, I was just going to say that I would like to see, like you talked about the option game expanding. I'd like to see the option game start to include Calvin in some capacity,
where you can almost a little, a speed option or triple option type thing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a whole bunch of different things. You can bring Calvin across in jet motion and just do a regular sort of two-man zone read play. Have just a normal mesh point. Like sort of like bring him into like a Percy Harvin role type thing.
Yeah.
Or you could do like it's some triple option stuff. You know what I mean? Bring him behind Jalen. There's no reason not to. You know what I mean? Let's get your athletes moving.
If the players are as long as your players are comfortable doing it, and Jalen, if it's learning a play that he doesn't know before, you want some time to get comfortable with it. But again and again, for whatever problems he's had in the passing game, his decision-making in the option game has been picture perfect.
Yeah.
There's probably been one or two, but he has consistently made great decisions in the option run game. And I would have full confidence in them adding more plays for him to continue doing that.
Right. And,
And you can mix in some. There's further variations on even just basic zone read. You can add some midline reads where you're reading a defensive tackle instead of an end. You can option just about anybody you want.
That's right.
And I would be very confident. And those are great ways to, like a midline read is a great way because like the zone read is such a common thing now that there are a lot of defensive ends and staffs that really know how to play that well. But a midline read, when it's a defensive tackle that has to make that decision, a lot of times they're not comfortable with that. So that's a great way that you can sort of punish them for that. But there's lots of ways to go with that, and I would love to see them just continue to add more and more. Yeah,
and with Calvin, it's not like they already use him in jet sweep motion on like half their plays as is. You know what I mean? So like, why not incorporate him into the option game? I just think it doesn't have to be a ton, but use him a little bit. Like if you want to go back to Clemson, like the way they use Ortega Scott sometimes, they work him in with the triple option sometimes as sort of a little wrinkle on the regular zone read with Watson and Gallman. So it's just more ways. Getting Calvin the ball in space is something that I'd really like to see more of, and this is a way to do it. they run the jet sweep a lot, and at times they have success with it, but a lot of times they don't have too much success with it, especially against better defenses. And it serves the purpose of setting up other running plays later in the game, like we saw against Ole Miss. But at the same time, though, I'd like to see Calvin actually get something for himself out of a lot of those plays. And maybe incorporating him into the option game instead of just the jet sweep game gives him more of a chance to become a factor there. So.
I guess one point as far as Arkansas goes, their run game is, I feel like, not as dangerous as it has been in years past. Not that even with the understanding that Alabama is going smaller and quicker on the front seven, I still don't think we're at a point where a traditional run game is really any sort of threat to this team. But Arkansas's offensive line, I don't feel, is as good in run blocking as it's been in years past. And Raleigh Williams, while a good back, is not on the level of, say, Alex Collins, for instance. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I don't see where Arkansas gets points from in this game, I guess.
I mean, for all the talk about Alabama going lighter along the defensive front, they have, if we include the outside linebackers in the defensive line conversations, and for Alabama's sake, they essentially are.
Yeah.
Alabama has 4 defensive linemen: Ryan Anderson, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Dalvin Tomlinson, who are
extremely good run defenders.
Exceptional, traditional, conventional run defenders.
And also, I mean, if you want to make anything about lack of size, well, if Alabama wanted to, theoretically, they could put a defensive line out, a traditional 3-4 defensive line out there of Deron Payne at nose and Raekwon and Josh Frazier at end, which would probably be the biggest defensive line in the Nick Saban era.
Yeah, that would challenge some of those Cody lines.
Yeah, they still have plenty of size out there, the size they can put out there if they choose.
And then this is the kind of game where you can get Reuben and Sean Dion Hamilton playing so fast, attacking the ball carriers. I cannot. I was a little bit worried coming into the season. I thought that this team, more so than past teams, might have been a little bit vulnerable against more traditional pro-style offenses because they're a little slimmed down in the middle. But watching them early in this season, I mean, just watching them against USC in that first game, the defensive front's incredible. Yeah. Arkansas is not going to run this football on Saturday.
Their attitude this week about how excited they are for this kind of attack also tells me that I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah. I mean, just like the defensive line is so stout, and when you have guys that good on the line, followed by inside linebackers who are as fast and physical as Reuben and Sean Dion, I just particularly with the way that Sean Dion has improved his play this year. As fast and as powerful as the two of them are playing, I don't see a traditional run game from anyone having success against this team.
Yeah, and I think that I think this is the kind of game that maybe Ronnie is going to be more effective in from the safety position, being able to come down and hit people in the run game. I mean, Alabama plays their sort of quarters variation where they get their safeties flying up to make plays against the run, and I think this is exactly the sort of game that Ronnie is going to thrive in because he really, he wants to come up and play the run. He wants to come up and deliver hits. So I can't bring myself to be concerned at all about Arkansas running the football successfully. I don't think that there's any reason to be. I still, and the other thing is that Alabama, the spread teams are most dangerous because they get so many Alabama defensive backs on the field and because they can isolate guys in coverage. Well, Arkansas doesn't really allow that. Ronnie, we talked about this earlier, but Ronnie's not going to be seeing a lot of time at money this game. I don't know. I'm not really sure how Arkansas moves the ball. It might come down to throwing the ball up and making the defensive backs play the ball in the air like it seems to every week.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't think.
Yeah, the spread is like 13.5 for this game right now, and that I think I would. It's a good. I would take Alabama to cover that at this point, probably.
Well, under 14, yeah. If it's gonna nose under 14, then I would probably be willing to lay the points here. It's still a road game,
Yeah.
you know, and it still gives you a chance, you know, and again, it's still the true freshman quarterback on the road, but Jalen's
It's a true freshman quarterback that's been in Oxford already. I mean,
it's a true freshman quarterback that's been in Oxford already, and it's a true freshman quarterback who you're not relying on to throw the ball all that much because of his ability as a runner. You know?
and a true freshman who, like, you know, you have to concede that he's going to, like, he has made mistakes. He's going to continue to make mistakes. He's not going to play error-free football, but a guy who just does not seem to be affected by that at all. So, like, maybe he fumbles or maybe he throws a pick or something like that, but you don't expect him to fall apart or anything like that.
He is. One thing I would give Jalen as far as mistakes go, he's very quick to throw the ball away.
Yes.
He throws a lot of balls, maybe even too many balls away, you know, which tells you that the staff has just been beating into his head from day one. Yeah. Do not put that football in harm's way. Do not take risks. Do not take chances.
Yeah.
And he clearly does that. He goes out of his way to, at any opportunity, whenever something breaks down, to just toss the ball away. So, you know, it comes down to the same thing. Alabama doesn't lose if they don't turn the ball over.
Yeah.
They never have. You know, they've lost one game since 2008 when they won the turnover battle, and that was the kick six. And in that game, they missed 3 field goals and had one of them, or 4 field goals or whatever, and had one of them run back for a touchdown. So, you know, if Alabama doesn't turn the ball over, they don't lose.
Yeah.
And that's as true this year as it's ever been. So the fact that Jalen is so cautious with the ball and is so quick to throw the ball away, that gives me a lot of confidence.
Right.
I did want to quickly go back. The defense scored again on Saturday. The defense scores a lot.
They do. They want to score.
It's pretty cool. It's really pretty cool.
Are so crazy about finding the end zone. It's awesome. And Mitch did this to us earlier. I don't know if any of y'all saw it, but apparently the defensive line and the DBs have been giving the linebackers a lot of shit up for not because the linebackers haven't scored yet this season. Apparently, Deron Payne is just going off all the time about how he scored, and Sean Dion is just like, man, he went like 2 inches. He got a 2-inch touchdown.
I love that. Who are the defensive players that have scored this year?
Marlon,
Ronnie,
Jonathan Allen,
and Deron, I think.
Just 4 guys?
Well, Eddie
scored, but he scored on special teams.
Minka hasn't yet this year.
The staff put out a graphic of it this week.
Did somebody?
Let me see if I can find it on Instagram.
Who?
They've had one in every game, right? So
yeah. What were the non-offensive touchdowns in the paycheck games?
Against Kent State, it was Xavier Marks' punt return.
Okay. And what about?
What about Western Kentucky?
Yeah.
Okay, so
was that another punt return?
Ronnie had a fumble return. Eddie had a punt return. John had a fumble. Deron. Oh, Eddie had a pick six.
Right, Eddie had a pick
six.
That's right. I knew they had another one. So they've scored 5 defensive touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Which is officially first in the country this week. They have 5 and Ohio State has 4, I think.
Yeah, and I do love, sort of a very humble brag here for the show. We beat the drum on that 2011 LSU comparison before the season. Wow.
We weren't wrong. So far, we have not been wrong.
They're living up to that in every way.
They just always and every time it seemed, and again it was against Kentucky. They were sloppy and it was 3-3 and things were going, and then
turn the game.
Fumble recovered for a touchdown.
Eddie's return against Ole Miss turned the game. Marlon's interception against Marlon's pick six against USC maybe didn't turn the game. The game was already turning, but it certainly maybe almost effectively ended
Yeah,
the
kind of
game,
opened the
actually.
floodgates.
So yeah, I mean, it's these scores, not only are they happening, but they're happening at opportune times. Um, it's just exactly what the defense is playing out. I think almost exactly as we envisioned, and in an almost ideal scenario. That's not to say that they're completely without weakness, but they covered it up with this just outstanding pass rush and this propensity to make big plays. And it's really such a enjoyable thing to watch for me, at
Yeah.
least. So excited to see who scores on defense this week.
I know, right? Gonna be upset if they can't get one.
Yeah.
Any questions this week?
I don't think
Not so far. We've had we've been between 2 and 5 live viewers throughout the broadcast, which is pretty good considering we randomly moved it up to Tuesday and announced it like 3 hours ago.
Yeah,
So.
and once again, I think we may have missed on the Wesson household demographic. But
So disappointing. Shout out to our live viewers, though. We're glad to have you here.
Always. Yeah, no, it's okay. Maybe we'll try to kind of still get on a consistent schedule going forward.
Yeah, I mean, like our default will be Thursdays at 7, but
Yes.
we seem to change that every week. So,
Hey,
yeah.
I would just say one more thing before we sign off. I see people talking about this as Alabama's toughest 3-game stretch under Saban. What do you guys think about that?
like consecutive 3 games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not something I've thought
It kind of
about.
looks like it right now. I mean, with the I don't know. Is there another stretch like that stands out to
Yeah,
y'all?
I'm trying to think. Because 3 games is a lot. Like in 2012, you had those LSU and Texas A&M games back to back, which was
Right.
obviously
Yeah.
pretty treacherous. But if you're talking about 3 games in a row, that's
Well,
a lot of
especially
time.
when you consider all the factors of that, like they go to Arkansas and Tennessee on the road back to back, and then while they're playing Tennessee, A&M has a bye week. And maybe it's at least after A&M's had that bye week, they get to come and play A&M at home. But
the A&M game continues to be the toughest game.
Yeah.
We feel good about Arkansas, like we just talked about, and Tennessee. For Tennessee, that is the 4th game in a very difficult 4-game stretch. Not just a difficult 4-game stretch, but a very emotional 4-game stretch, which has to be taxing on them. You got Florida, and then you got Georgia, and then this week you go to A&M, and then Alabama is the 4th game. That's.
And this isn't like last year where Alabama is it's in its 8th game coming without a bye, and this will be
Right.
Tennessee's 7th game without a bye, same as us. So
And for Alabama, it's really their 2nd game. It's just all they had was Arkansas before this. The other games were not sort of all that taxing on them. Kentucky or Kent State or whatever. So I know Tennessee finds a way to win every week, but I kind of feel as each week goes by, I sort of feel better about that Tennessee game, if I'm being honest about it.
Yeah, it's just I don't like Dobbs has gotten better in recent weeks this season.
Sure.
I still don't respect his ability. I still think unless you're Jordan Jefferson, like to beat Alabama, you need to have a quarterback playing either a really fantastic quarterback playing up to his own standard or a not fantastic quarterback playing out of his mind, a la Stephen Garcia or Trevor Knight.
Yes.
I just don't think Dobbs is that quarterback. Yeah. And I don't think Tennessee's receivers are all that great.
They got some size, though. They got some size.
Yeah.
Which is good. I really think that the Alabama defensive line should be able to dominate, though.
Yes. Tennessee's
right, and that's where everything's going to start. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everything's going to start with Alabama winning up front. I still think, though, it'll be a tough game, and then it'll be the biggest game in Knoxville in
right.
God knows how long. It's going to be the biggest game in Knoxville since Well, I don't really know.
I don't know. They got to win
they
this
haven't
week.
been, especially if they get a win this week and then they're coming in 6-0. I mean, how long has it been since they were 6-0?
I don't know.
Well, it would have been. No, I think it's since 1998 when they won the
I was
championship.
going to say, just go all the way back to T. Martin.
Because they always play Florida early, so in the last 11 years before this year, they would have always had a loss. And then I'm pretty sure I heard it said on TV that like they hadn't started this well since like their championship season in '98.
Yeah, but I do really think though. So it'll be a tough spot, obviously, but I still think, and it goes back to stuff we seem to have talked about the last few weeks. The A&M game is going to be the season.
Yeah, I will say as far as A&M goes, I think for A&M to win that game, Trevor Knight has to throw the ball better than he has thus far this season. He's been he has not been that quarterback from that 2013-14 Sugar Bowl thus far. He's been a very inconsistent and often inaccurate passer this season, and that's not going to get it done against Alabama.
But let's throw something out there, though, about A&M. Let's go Vols this week.
Oh, yeah. I know a lot of y'all don't want to hear this.
But
especially those of you who, like the players, consider Tennessee to be Alabama's biggest rival.
Yeah.
You have to root for Tennessee this week.
Absolutely.
You just have to. Because the West team that it's and as much as you also don't want to hear this, Alabama can lose to Tennessee in Knoxville. That doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at all.
As far as their West SEC national title hopes, that game does not matter because if they lose that game and go undefeated, they can, all their goals are still in front of them.
It eliminates their margin of error.
Yes.
But it is of no consequence to them as far as their path to a national championship.
But if they lose to A&M, that's a real problem.
Right.
And so A&M needs to have, and with A&M coming off the bye and it being 8 straight games for Alabama, a lot of things are set up for that to be a really tough game for Alabama and for that to be a really tough spot for them if they lose. So Alabama absolutely needs A&M to take a loss. Preferably, I mean, they need A&M to have 2 losses if they end up losing to them. And so really the only threats to A&M left on their schedule besides Alabama are Tennessee and Ole Miss. Now, unfortunately, both of those games are in College Station, but...
Where's the LSU game? Oh, that's in College Station, I think.
Is it?
Because I think last year it was in... Yeah, because it was 2 years ago on Thanksgiving when Fournette ran over that guy, and that was in College Station. And last year it was in LSU when Les saved his job. So, Alabama, and Carter talked about this with Tennessee, but it holds true with everybody. For all intents and purposes, we can't say this with 100% certainty, but I can say this with pretty close to 100% certainty. Alabama can survive any one loss the rest of the way, except maybe A&M. Alabama can lose to Arkansas, and that shouldn't disrupt their path to a national championship because that just means Arkansas has to lose once more in conference, and they're going to do that.
Yes.
And same thing for LSU. Same thing for
Auburn's already lost.
Auburn has one loss.
They have one.
Again in the SEC.
But they're going to lose again.
And Mississippi State
not even a consideration.
So Alabama's already beaten Ole Miss, right? So Alabama can afford one loss to anybody.
Yep.
Except maybe A&M, which is why root hard for A&M this week because root hard for Tennessee this week because it potentially opens things up for the possibility for Alabama losing that game, but still winning the West and still going to the national championship. The other possibility,
if you're looking for if you really hate Tennessee and you're having a hard time with this, if you're looking for an angle, just think about how satisfying it's going to be if Alabama rolls into Knoxville 6-0 and the Vols just have huge heads and they're just going cocky and they think this is their year. And if Alabama were to just roll in there and knock them off,
guys, let's be honest.
How satisfying that would be.
Let's be honest. We want Tennessee to win this week, not just for A&M purposes, but that's awesome. That sets up like a pretty freaking awesome Saturday, 2 Saturdays from now in Knoxville. I mean, Alabama and Tennessee undefeated. When is the last time that happened? when they matched up. I mean, that's a long time. That is.
It couldn't have been earlier than like the Gene Stallings years.
That's what I was gonna say.
I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head of a time when that happened.
I mean, that's awesome. That's some pretty good football theater there. So that's.
Yeah. And as an Alabama fan, if part of your enjoyment is not feeding on the despair of the opponents that you beat, you're kind of doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And if you want to achieve peak despair, then you kind of want an undefeated Tennessee. I
want an undefeated. I say that without.
Yep.
Without any, even if the A&M thing wasn't a factor at all, I want Tennessee undefeated into that game because that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, game day going to be there, and it's going to be a big show. Game day might be there no matter what, but it's going to be a big show, and it's going to be awesome. So, go Vols. I guess the only other thing that I would say about A&M, and we talked briefly about this, is the idea that if Alabama loses to A&M, it's still possible that Alabama could win the West with A&M only getting one loss, because if their one loss comes against Ole Miss, and Ole Miss wins the remainder of their games, and Alabama does the same, and all three teams finish at 7-1 in conference, go Kentucky this week. That's the other team everybody's got to lose.
Yeah, we have to. So we had talked about the three of us talked about this week, and the tiebreaker there is it's the combined records of your East opponents, and the East opponents for these three teams are Tennessee and Kentucky for Alabama, Tennessee and South Carolina for A&M, and Georgia and Vandy for Ole Miss. So in that situation, Ole Miss is probably not going to be a factor. Because Vandy may not win a conference game, and because Georgia's already got a couple losses, and they seem likely to pick up a few more. And in any event, they don't seem likely to have as good of a conference record as Tennessee will. So basically, we are fortunate to just need Kentucky to have a better SEC record than South Carolina, and they've already beaten South Carolina.
And they have Vandy this week, so they have to win that game. And as far as cross-division opponents go, I think 2 weeks from now they draw Mississippi State at home.
Yeah.
Which is a very winnable game for them.
So if Kentucky can win both of those games, that puts Alabama in a very good spot as far as that tiebreaker would go.
Yeah. The Kentucky thing ceases to matter if Tennessee beats A&M this week. Because if Tennessee beats A&M this week, then the three-way tie scenario is kind of out the window.
Right.
But if A&M
wins, then.
If A&M wins that game, then there is some importance here for Kentucky to do well, for Alabama to maintain an advantage in the event of a three-way tiebreak. So,
and if you're curious, what happens if all of your East opponents' records are tied? It goes to a coin flip. So we probably don't want that either. The next tiebreaker is a coin flip.
That would not be.
That's surprising. The fourth tiebreaker is
no. It's not fourth. It's like, so the one that we're talking about is G. So that would be A, B, C.
Oh,
and it's like the sixth tiebreaker. So this would be the seventh tiebreaker, because all of the other tiebreakers have to do with like Western opponents and how they did, or how you did against them, or whatever.
Okay. So
so it gets all the way to G, and then H is a coin flip. But the coin flip probably would be in Birmingham, so we probably like our odds there.
Good.
You would think the Rec could spend enough money to get like a weighted coin in there or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
shit, I'll pay for it myself.
This would be like, have you guys ever seen the Friday Night Lights movie?
Yeah. It's been a while, but yeah.
Did you remember the coin flip at that random truck stop?
Yes.
Which is an awesome scene.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
So I'd imagine it's something like that, some random truck stop in some nowhere place, deciding the SEC. Pretty cool. But anyway, we're getting pretty deep into it, and we're talking about scenarios that involve an Alabama loss, which, as you all know, hasn't even occurred yet. But just in case, go Tennessee this weekend. And go Kentucky this weekend.
All right.
And go Alabama this weekend.
Yeah, and roll Tide, I guess.
Yeah, that's a real secondary.
An afterthought.
Yeah, worry about the other things more, but also, go Alabama, roll Tide.
All right. With that, I think we'll wrap it up. We'll see y'all next week, and roll Tide.
All
Roll
time.
Tide.